श्रीमात्रे नमः. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Previously, we completed 2 episodes of Shakti As Mantra. Now, the third and final episode we are going to conclude after the prayer. Pujyaya Raghavendraya Satyadharmarataya cha Bhajatam Kalpavrukshaya Namatam Kamadhenave. Just as a body is kaushal, subtle and grass, so is the Shabda, of which there are 4 states called Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama and Vaikhari. Para sound is that which exists on differentiation of Mahabindu center of the body. That aspect of it in which it commences to move with a general, that is, non-particularized motion is Pashyanti, whose place is from Mooladhara to the Manipura chakra. The next center, it is here associated with Manas. These represent the motionless and fast moving Ishvara aspect of Shabda. Madhyama Shabda is associated with Buddhi. It is Hiranyagarbha, sound extending from Pashyanti to the heart. Both Madhyama sound, which is inner naming by the cognitive aspect of mental movement, as also its artha or subtle object, belong to the mental or subtle body. Perception is dependent on distinguishing and identification. In the perception of an object, that part of the mind which identifies and distinguishes and thus names are the cognizing part is from the Shabda aspects, subtle Shabda, and that part of it which takes the shape of and thus constitutes the objective subtle Artha. The perception of an object is thus consequent on the simultaneous functioning of the mind in its twofold aspect as Shabda and Artha, which are an indissoluble relation with one another as cognizer and cognized. Both belong to the subtle body. In creation, Madhyama sound first appeared. At that moment, there was no outer Artha. Then the cosmic mind projected this inner Madhyama Artha into the world of sensual experience and named it in spoken speech. The last or the Vaikhari Shabda is uttered speech, developed in the throat, issuing from the mouth. This is Virat Shabda. Vaikhari Shabda is therefore language or gross lettered sound. Its corresponding Artha is the physical or gross object which language denotes. This belongs to the gross body. Madhyama Shabda is mental movement or ideation with its cognitive aspect, and Madhyama Artha is the mental impression of the gross object. Impression of the gross object. The inner thought movement in its aspect as Vachaka and denoted Vachya. When the mind perceives an object, it is transformed into the shape of that object. So the mind which thinks of the divinity which it worships is at length through continued devotion transformed into the likeness of that Devata. By allowing the Devata thus to occupy the mind for long, it becomes as pure as the Devata. This is a fundamental principle of tantric sadhana or religious practice. The outer physical object of which the latter is in the individual an impression is also artha or rupa, and spoken speech is the outer shabda. The mind is thus, from the mantra aspect, shabda and artha, terms corresponding to the Vedantic nama and rupa, are concepts and concepts of objectified. The Mayavada Vedanta says that the whole creation is nama and rupa. Mind as a shabda is the power of the function of which is to distinguish and identify. Just as a body is causal, subtle, and gross, so is shabda, of which there are four states called para, pashyanti, madhyama, and vaikari. Para sound is that which exists on the differentiation of the Mahabindu before actual manifestation. This is motionless, causal, shabda in Kundalini, in the Mooladhara center of the body. That aspect of it in which it commences to move with a general, that is, non-particularized motion is Pashyanti, whose place is from the Mooladhara to the Manipura chakra, the next center. It is here associated with Manas. These represent the motionless and first moving Ishvara aspect of Shabda. Madhyama Shabda associated with Buddhi. It is Hiranyagarbha sound extending from Pashyanti to the heart. Both Madhyama sound, which is inner, naming by the cognitive aspect of mental movement, as also its Ardha or subtle object, belong to the mental or subtle body. Perception is dependent on distinguishing and identification. In the perception of an object, that part of the mind which identifies and distinguishes and thus names are the cognizing parties from the Shabda aspect, subtle Shabda, and that part of it which takes the shape of and thus constitutes the object is subtle Artha. The perception of an object is thus consequent on the simultaneous functioning of the mind in its twofold aspect as Shabda and Artha, which are in indissoluble relation with one another as cognizer and cognized. Both belong to the subtle body. In creation, Madhyama sound first appeared. At that moment, there was no outer Artha. Then the cosmic mind projected this inner Madhyama Artha into the world of sensual experience and named it in spoken speech. The last or Vaikari Shabda is uttered speech, developed in the throat, issuing from the mouth. This is Virat Shabda. Vaikari Shabda is therefore language or gross lettered sound. Its corresponding Artha is the physical or gross object which language denotes. This belongs to the gross body. Madhyama Shabda is mental movement or ideation in its cognitive aspect, and Madhyama Artha is the mental impression of the gross object. This belongs to the gross body. Madhyama Shabda is mental movement in its cognitive aspect, and Madhyama Artha is the mental impression of gross object. The inner thought movement in its aspect as Shabdartha and considered both in its knowing aspect and as the subtle known object belongs to the subtle body. The cause of these two is the first, general movements towards particular ideation from the motionless cause, Parashabda or supreme speech. Two forms of inner or hidden speech, causal, subtle, accompanying mind movement, thus precede and lead up to spoken language. The inner forms of ideating movement constitute the subtle and the uttered sound, the gross aspect of mantra, which is manifested Shabda Brahman. The whole world is thus Shabda and Artha, that is, name and form. These two are inseparably associated. There is no Shabda without Artha or Artha without Shabda. Both are united one. The Greek word logos also means thought and word combined. There is thus a double line of creation, Shabda and Artha. Ideas and language together with objects. Speech as that which is heard or the outer manifestation of Shabda stands for the Shabda creation. The Artha creation are the inner and outer objects seen by mental or physical vision. From the cosmic creative standpoint, to the mind comes first, and from it is involved the physical world according to the ripened samskaras, which led to the existence of the particular existing universe. Therefore, the mental Artha precedes the physical Artha, which is an evolution in gross matter of the former. This mental state corresponds to that dreams when man lives in the mental world only. After creation, which is a working state, there is for the individual an already existing parallelism of names and objects. Uttered speech is a manifestation of the inner naming or thought. This thought movement is similar in men of all races. When an Englishman or an Indian thinks of an object, the image is to both the same, whether evoked by the object itself or by the utterance of its name. For this reason, possibly, if thought reading be accepted, a thought reader whose cerebral center is and rapport with that of another may read the hidden speech, that is, thought, of one whose spoken speech he cannot understand. Thus, while the thought movement is similar in all men, the expression of it as Vaikari Shabda differs. According to tradition, there was once a universal language. According to the biblical account, this was so before the confusion of tongues at the Tower of the Babel. Similarly, there is in the Rigveda the mysterious passage which speaks of the three fathers and three mothers, by whose action, like that of the Elohim, all comprehending speech is due to difference of races evolved in the course of time. If the instruments by which and conditions under which thought is revealed in speech were the same for all men, then there would be but one language. But now this is not so. Racial characteristics and physical conditions, such as the nature of the vocal organs, climate, inherited impressions, and so forth, differ. So also does language, but for each particular man speaking any particular language, the uttered name of any object is the gross expression of his inner thought movement. It evokes the idea, and the idea is consciousness as mental operation. That operation can be so intensified as to be itself creative. This is Mantra Chaitanya. It is said in the Tantra Shastras that the 50 letters of the alphabet are in the 6 bodily chakra called Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha and Ajna chakras. These 50 letters multiplied by 20 are in the 1000 peeled lotus or Sahasrara. From the above account, it will be understood that when it is said that the letters are in the 6 bodily chakras, it is not to be supposed that it is intended to absurdly affirm that the letters as written shapes or as uttered sounds which are heard by the ear are there. The letters in this sense, that is, as gross things, are manifested only in speech or writing. This much is clear, but the precise significance of the statement is a matter of some different difficulty. There is, in fact, no subject which presents more difficulties than Mantra Vidya, whether considered generally or interrelation to the particular matters in hand. We do not pretend to have elucidated all its difficulties. If the arrangement be not artificial for the purpose of sadhana, the simplest explanation is that which follows. From the Brahman are produced the 5 bhutas, sky, air, fire, water, earth, in the order stated. And from them issued the 6 chakras from Ajna to Mooladhara. The letters are placed in the chakras in the alphabetical order. That is, vowels as being the first letters of Shaktis of the consonants are placed in the Vishuddha chakra. The first consonants ka to ta in Anahata, and so forth until the Mooladhara, wherein are said the last four letters from Va to Sa. Thus, in Ajna, there are Ha and Ksha as being Brahma Bijas. In the next are Vishuddha Chakra are the 16 vowels which originated first. The connection between particular letters and the chakras in which they are placed is further said to be due to the fact that the uttering any particular letter, the chakra in which it is placed and its surroundings are brought into play. The sounds of the Sanskrit alphabet are classified according to the organs used in their articulation and are Kantha, Talu, Murdha, Danta and Usta. When so articulated, each letter, it is said, touches the chakra in which it is and in which on this account it has been placed. In uttering them, certain chakras are affected, that is, brought into play. This, it is alleged, will be found to be so if the letter is carefully pronounced and attention is paid to the accompanying bodily movement. Thus, in uttering Ha, the head Ajna is touched, and uttered in uttering the deep-seated Va, the basal chakra or Mooladhara. In making the first sound, the forehead is felt to be affected, and in making the first sound, the forehead is felt to be placed, and in making the last lower part of the body around the root lotus. This is the theory put forth as accounting for the position of the letters in chakras. A mantra is, like everything else, Shakti, but the mere utterance of a mantra without more is a mere movement of the lips. The mantra must be awakened just like any other Shakti, if effect is to be had therefrom. This is a union of sound and the idea through a knowledge of the mantra and its meaning. The recitation of a mantra without knowing its meaning is practically fruitless. Each mantra is the embodiment of a particular form of consciousness of Shakti. This is mantra Shakti. Consciousness or Shakti also exists in the form of sadhaka. The object then is the unite these two, when thought is not only in the outer husk but is vitalized by will, knowledge and action through its conscious center in union with that of the mantra. The Devatha of the mantra is only the creative Shakti assuming that particular form. As already stated, Devatha may be realized only object, not namely in mantras, yantras, ghatas, or pratimas, or other ritual objects of worship. The same power which manifests to the ear in the mantra is represented in the lines and curves of the yantra, which the Kaulavali Tantra says in the body of the Devatha. यन्त्रं मन्त्रमयं प्रोक्तं मन्त्रात्मा देवतैव हि देहात्मनोर्यथा भेदो यन्त्रदेवतयोस्तथा. The yantra is thus the graphic symbol of the Shakti, indicated by the mantra with which identification takes place. The pratima or image is a grosser visual form of the Devata, but the mantras are particular forms of divine Shakti, the realization of which is efficacious to produce particular results. As in Kundalini Yoga, so also here the identification of the sadhaka with different mantras gives rise to various vibhutis or powers. For each grouping of the letters represents a new combination of the Matrika Shaktis. It is eternal Shakti who is the life of the mantra. Therefore, Siddhi in the mantra sadhana is the union of sadhaka's Shakti with the mantra Shakti. The identification of sadhaka with the mantra is the identification of the knower, knowing, and known are the sadhaka mantra and devata. Then the mantra works. The mind must feed and is always feeding something. It seizes the mantra and works its way to its heart. When there it is the mind of the sadhaka unified with the Shakti of the mantra which works. Then subject and object in its mantra form meet as one. By meditation, the sadhaka gains unity with the devata behind, as it were, the mantra and whose form the mantra is. The union of sadhaka of the mantra and devata of the mantra is the result of the effort to realize permanently the incipient desire for such union. The will towards divinity is a dynamic force which pierces everything and finds their divinity itself. It is because Westerners and some westernized Hindus do not understand the principles of mantra. Principles which lie at the center of Indian religious theory and practice, that they see nothing in it, where they do not regard it as gross superstition. It must be admitted that mantra sadhana is often done ignorantly. Faith is placed in externals and the inner meaning is often lost. But even such ignorant worship is better than none at all. It is better to bow to Narayana with one's shoes on the never to bow at all. Much also is said of vain repetitions. Japa is compared to the action of a man shaking a sleeper to wake him up. The sadhaka's own consciousness is awakened. The two lips are Shiva and Shakti. The moment in utterance is the cohesion, Maithuna of the two. Shabda, which issues therefrom, is in the nature of Bindu. The Devata then appearing is, as it were, the son of Sadhaka. It is not the supreme Devata who appears, but in all cases an emanation produced by the sadhaka's worship for his benefit only. In the case of worshippers of the Shiva mantra, a boy Shiva appears who is then made strong by the nature which sadhaka gives him. The mantra method is Shaktopaya Yoga, working with concepts and form, while Shambhavopaya Yoga has been well said to be a more direct attempt at intuition of Shakti, apart from all passing concepts, which, as they cannot show the reality, only serve to hide it the more from one's view and thus maintain bondage. There is thus a synthesis of this pratikopasana with the yoga method, resting as all else upon a Vedantic basis. Shreekantaय कल्याण नदे नदेद्राम श्री वेंकट निवासाय श्रीनिवासाय मंगलम मंगलाशासन प्रेमदाचार्य पुरोगमे सर्वैश्च पूर्वैराचार्य सत्कृतायास्तु मंगलम.